Access Minnesota, issues that matter to you. Access Minnesota brings you the newsmakers and the stories that shape our everyday lives, with analysis from University of Minnesota faculty experts. Now, here's Jim Dubois.
November 22nd, 1963 was a typical Friday in the United States. With Thanksgiving the following Thursday, many were looking forward to a short work week and the upcoming holiday season. But all that changed when President John F. Kennedy was cut down by gunfire in a Dallas motorcade. For the next 4 days, Americans saw history unfold on their living room televisions. 50 years later, the fascination with the Kennedy assassination continues. This month on Access Minnesota, a look at an upcoming University of Minnesota Learning Life course, The Assassination of John F. Kennedy, an event that changed history. We sat down with U of M retired humanities professor James Norwood, who teaches the course. Professor Norwood, take us back to that day, Friday, November 22nd, 1963. The presidential motorcade was coming through Dealey Plaza in Dallas. What happened around 12:30 Central Time in the afternoon?
Yes, on this occasion, President Kennedy was eager to start his re-election campaign for 1964. He went to Texas expressly to mend some fences. He was not popular as a whole in Texas, but he was warmly greeted by the crowds in the various cities of Texas when he arrived. Now, on Friday the 22nd, he arrived in Dallas, got off the airplane, got into the limousine, and these extraordinary crowds greeted him as he moved through the city. One can see the images of the progression of the limousine, the motorcade, and really be shocked at the lack of security, the lack of protection that the president had.
Once the president is in Dealey Plaza in his open limousine and shots ring out, why don't you point out where the principal players were at this time in Dealey Plaza and take us through who they were and how they have played a part in the continuing story about the JFK assassination?
Actually, if you'll permit me to give our audience a kind of tour of the Dealey Plaza site, and we can see some of the eyewitness testimony, where the people were standing, what they reported. We might be able to break down this particular question to shed light on not only how many shots were fired, but the direction from which the shots came. Keep in mind that the Warren Commission concluded that Oswald fired 3 rounds. They all came, of course, from behind the presidential limousine. Now, one key witness, and one of really unimpeachable character, is William Newman. Bill Newman and his family were the closest in proximity to the president as the motorcade was lumbering down Elm Street. And William Newman is depicted immediately after the assassination on the ground as he urged his family to basically take cover, hit the ground, and one can actually see photographs of Mr. Newman covering, trying to protect his children. Mr. Newman claimed that he heard shots coming from behind him and sensed the bullets actually whizzing by. That is why he urged his family to duck for cover. Then immediately across the street from Bill Newman, standing in the area of the plaza lawn, this was the eyewitness, Gene Hill. Gene was standing right next to Mary Moorman, who took one of the most famous photographs of the assassination. And in that photograph, we can see Gene's actual position facing the knoll area and the picket fence. Gene testified before the Warren Commission that she heard 4 to 6 shots, and that she actually saw the flash of light and a rifle behind the picket fence. If we then turn to Elm Street, 2 cars behind the presidential limousine, Senator Yarborough of Texas later testified that he saw a puff of smoke coming from the area of the picket fence, and he actually then smelled the smoke as the limousine and the motorcade proceeded down Elm Street. Yarborough witnessed that. Directly in front of him was the follow-up car with the Secret Service and two of the most loyal assistants of President Kennedy, Dave Powers and Kenneth O'Donnell. Both Powers and O'Donnell described the event as an ambush, as if they were walking into a fusillade of gunshots, certainly more than 3. Dave Powers, later after seeing the Oliver Stone film, said he got it right in the depiction and recreation of the assassination scene. Then we have S.N. Holland, who's standing up on top of the freeway overpass. It was actually railroad track, and Holland testified that he saw also a large puff of smoke coming from behind the picket fence. Then immediately after the motorcade had passed, a Dallas police officer, Joe Smith, followed the crowd that was moving up the knoll area. They didn't go to the book depository. The people who were the eyewitnesses generally felt that the bullets were coming from directly in front of the president up in the knoll area. Now, Joe Smith, the officer, went behind the picket fence, and he was in the process of making an arrest on what he thought was a suspicious person, who then pulled out ID and claimed that he was a Secret Service agent. Now, it turned out there were no Secret Service agents on the ground in Dealey Plaza. They were all in the motorcade. So Officer Smith let that gentleman go. The final witness is Ed Hoffman. This gentleman was standing up on the freeway well in back of that first overpass. It's called the triple overpass. And he pulled his car over on the freeway and had a bird's eye view behind the grassy knoll area. And Ed Hoffman actually witnessed the shooting from behind the picket fence. He saw a rifle. He saw a man disassemble the rifle. He saw a man in a suit who then walked away casually. And he actually witnessed the man who was nearly arrested by Officer Smith. Officer Smith may have come close to arresting one of the assassins in the JFK death. Now, the reason I'm spending some time on this is to underscore the importance of eyewitness testimony. Often our physical evidence in this case fails us, and that is the case with the endless attempts to try to identify how many shots were fired, looking at the Zapruder film, discussing the ballistics. When all of that fails, we have to rely on eyewitness evidence. Sometimes the eyewitnesses disagree, but in other instances we can get a consensus of eyewitness testimony, and that is certainly the case in those eyewitnesses who are in Dealey Plaza and can help to identify both the number of shots fired and the all-important question of the direction of the shots.
When Access Minnesota returns, Professor Norwood discusses the shortcomings of the initial JFK assassination investigation and the Warren Commission report that followed.
Access Minnesota will return after these messages.